This video was sponsored by Atlas. Kind of a sheen. Hello, my lovely friends. Please forgive the lack of visual on my handsome face. I currently do not have access to my studio. But here's the thing. There's something I've been meaning to talk about for a long time. Super long time. Well over a year. It kept slipping through the cracks. But you know what? Now I'm ready. It's about Splatoon 3. When Splatoon 3 was first announced, there were many people who just didn't really see the point. They didn't really know why it was happening, and I was among those people. I was one of them. To me, it just feels like if you've got a big multiplayer series, why would you put more than one entry on one system? You know, I kind of feel like it's like Smash Brothers. You get one per system. That just makes Mario Kart, one per system. It just makes the most sense in my mind, especially because you can just keep updating your game as much as you want. You can just have DLC. You don't even have to just have one single expansion pass. You can have one every year if you wanted. You know, like that's the joys of DLC. They gotta keep going forever. And if you've got some bigger changes that you want to make, why wouldn't you just wait? Why wouldn't you just save them for the next big entry on the next system? And then also, just based on what they were showing us of the game, it just didn't really seem like a big jump. There was no like one thing about Splatoon 3 that just completely changed the game and introduced some massive new element. It really did seem like kind of like Splatoon 1 to 2, just kind of a bit of an incremental jump. And I had no doubt that this would be a good game, a great game, a wonderful game. Splatoon is amazing. I had no doubt that there would be enough changes, at least enough, you know what I mean, to still be a good product. I knew it'd have a new story and all that, so like I knew I was gonna buy it and I was gonna play it and I would enjoy it. I just didn't know why. And the biggest thing that I got hung up on was this idea that usually if you have a game on a system, a sequel on that same system is almost never gonna perform as well, because you have all the people who bought the first one, and at any point, anyone else could just buy that one. So if you put out a sequel, it's only gonna sell less, because you're not gonna get a bunch of new people coming to the sequel. If they were interested, they would just buy the first one. So pretty much across the board, you put out two games from the same series on the same system, the second one is probably not gonna do as well. And I was really focused on that idea right there. And that was another reason it just didn't seem like it made sense, you know, kind of sort of nearing the end of the Switch's life. You know, by the time Splatoon 3 came out, not like at the end, but just kind of like getting there. It's like you couldn't just wait like a couple years, put it on the next system. And here's the thing, is I was wrong. That's what I'm here to say. I'm here to publicly admit I was wrong. I was totally wrong. And like, you know what? The proof is in the pudding. Look at this pudding right here. Money talks. Splatoon 3 has sold very, very, very well. I mean, right when the game launched, all these articles coming out about how it sold 10 million copies in the first like 3 weeks. Just a resounding success. And even just putting everything else aside for the moment, everything about whether or not it should have happened, at the end of the day, from the business standpoint, it sold that well. That means it was a good idea. It means it just was. Objectively speaking, it was the correct course of action for Nintendo to take. So even just right there, I was wrong. Dead wrong. And here's the thing though, I really get it now. I understand now why, not even like, I mean, the money was the proof, like the sales were the proof, but like now I understand why, even leading up to it, why my perspective was wrong and why they were correct. The biggest thing, this is the absolute biggest thing that I did not consider, and it was that this is a multiplayer game, and the rules for sequels do not necessarily apply. That's the absolute biggest thing. Like, I knew that there would be a pretty big chunk of, you know, the diehard fans, an amount of the audience, the people who bought Splatoon 2, who are no matter what gonna buy Splatoon 3. I'm pretty sure it's a good chunk there. I just didn't think it would be enough But the part that I didn't consider is that they are not the only ones you gotta look at. With a multiplayer game, there are plenty of people who wanted to get in on it, but like it had been out for so long that now it's got a whole meta, it's all very established, and they're just kind of like waiting for an opportunity to jump in. And that is what a sequel does. A sequel is not just the same again. This is a brand new launching point for new players. People who want to get into the series, who've been wanting to get into the series. This is it. This is when you do it. Splatoon 3 was their signal. And that was probably a lot of people. And you take them and combine that with the people who enjoyed 2 and just wanted more of it. And that ended up being a heck of a much bigger number than I anticipated. I was looking at wrong rules for games that just did not apply to this series. And like, if you wanted to, you could still argue that like more, I don't know, artistically or something, because Splatoon 3 didn't have any really big huge changes, then maybe they still should have waited. Maybe they still should have just waited a couple extra years and given us a whole, you know, made Splatoon 3 a really big humongous sequel for the next Nintendo system or whatever. Or of course there's the idea that whatever changes they made here, they should have just made it DLC. They should have just kept updating the game. But here's the thing, this is another thing where I get it now. I completely understand why they did what they did. It is easy to say that this stuff should have been DLC, but that's really not realistic. It's really not realistic for a number of reasons. I honestly think this team, the Splatoon team, they are full of ideas. They are absolutely full of ideas for just, I mean, you know, little changes to the mechanics and specials and levels and all that stuff. They've got a lot that they want to do, and they want to keep evolving the game, but you can't necessarily change the game in the form of patches and DLC. Like, you can do that, but only up to a certain point. Because their new ideas, they're not just ideas that they can sell as these little conveniently contained packages or just, you know, simple patches. They want to make changes to the game itself, the core experience, you know, the setting and the story, the campaign and everything like that. And here's the biggest thing to realize. This is not a free-to-play live service game. This is a $60 product. There's kind of an expectation where when you go to the store, you buy it, you're gonna get that game. There's only so much that you can update it. You know, you have something like Fortnite, yeah, free to play, live service. That can be whatever they want it to be. They can add and remove entire chunks of the game and just features and modes as they want, because that's just the way that those kinds of games work. That's not the case here. That's not the case with Splatoon. They really can't do that. You know, like each game has got its hosts, its main characters, its music people. You can't just take out the old ones and bring in new ones. Now you are actually removing something from your game. So now people who are like, oh, I really like Splatoon 2, but you just kind of deleted all of that stuff, set it in a new setting, like you updated the game to be a new game. You really can't do that. In order to give us new hosts and a new location and story and all that stuff, it's really got to be a new game. And especially you've got little things like, you know, little mechanics, movement mechanics that they added to this one. And then of course you've got your other stuff like, you know, changes to Salmon Run. And then you've got the mostly, like the biggest thing is like the lobby. Just like the multiplayer lobby, the fact that you can like hang around with people and run around. That's another thing that's like, that's a brand new idea that is so much better suited to a sequel, a fresh new game. Before we continue with the video, a brief reminder that it was sponsored by Atlas. Persona 3 Reload is available for pre-order right now and releases February 2nd on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series S, Series X, Windows, and Steam. This is a reimagining of Persona 3 with all new graphics and UI and lots of new quality of life features. It's a self-contained story, so it's a perfect place to jump into the series, which is great for me because this is actually actually my first mainline Persona game. It's this really interesting mix where you're a high school student hanging out with friends and exploring the city by day, and summoning creatures to fight monsters in a big weird dungeon by night. Both fronts are equally engaging. The story is interesting, and there's a huge wealth of dialogue and opportunities to develop relationships with characters. And the Tartarus is fun to explore, combat is intuitive and feels really good, and I barely scratched the surface on the Persona system. It's clearly an incredibly meaty experience, and I've been really enjoying digging in so far. You know, I think I'm starting to understand why so many people have been begging me to get into this whole Persona thing. Once more, Persona 3 Reload is out February 2nd. Thanks again to Atlas. Now back to the video. And you know, maybe they're not interested in drastically changing the game, adding some big huge thing, because you know what? Splatoon is already just about perfect. It's a fantastic formula. It really just worked from day one on the Wii U. It's just fantastic, and from there, it is just kind of incrementally bringing in new modes and features and stuff. So it's like, even if they did wait to put Splatoon 3 on Switch 2, would they have some big, massive new change? Probably not, because all of these things that they are changing, these are the things that they feel like they actually want to change. This is how you change a multiplayer series that is not a free-to-play live service game that you can just update to be whatever you want. This is the Nintendo approach, you know? Like, this is how Nintendo has chosen to do it's a very similar kind of game to those games. It is a multiplayer game. It is being updated a lot with a lot of content, but it's still a first-party Nintendo game. It's still a $60 product. And this is how they have chosen to support this kind of series in their own unique way on their own platform. And then, of course, from Nintendo's perspective, from the business side, again, like, this form of evolution is just better for the business. You know, it means a big bump in profit a lot sooner. Like the Switch, it's a long generation. We're going on 7 years. Might end up being 8 years. We don't know. Like, Nintendo doesn't want to wait 7 or 8 years for the next game to come out. And they don't want to just do DLC, you know? They're like, no, we want to have a couple Splatoons on this system. It's a long generation. And I guess it might seem kind of greedy, but like, I don't know. I get it. I completely get where they're coming from. Again, this is how they handle this kind of game. But honestly, I don't see it just as a business thing. I don't see it just as Nintendo wanting more money sooner. I get the feeling that the Splatoon team, genuinely care about the game. They genuinely want to keep evolving it and want to keep telling new stories and setting the game in new places. I mean, they're always advancing the lore and everything, you know? Like, sure, feature-wise, Splatoon 3 didn't have like an absolute ton over 2, but it still got to be in that new setting, new story, all that stuff. The lore is always getting bigger and bigger, and I honestly get it. I get it completely. I feel like they made the game they wanted to make. This wasn't just a rush job. This is an even more, I mean, you know, it's all subjective. I feel like this is an even more just perfectly refined experience. Love all of the new features and everything. And I get it. I just get it now. And I was wrong. So there you go. That's the thing. I was just completely wrong. I think it makes perfect sense, both creatively and business-wise, from their perspective, to have made Splatoon 3 when they did and put it on Switch. Makes perfect sense. And I was wrong. I didn't see it. I just didn't see it. Sometimes you just don't see it. And it just goes to show, it is rare. It is exceedingly rare. But sometimes I'm wrong. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't really remember the last time I was wrong, but here's a good one right here. I'll give this one to you. Before we wrap this up, this is a little bit beside the point, but I do want to bring it up because we are on the subject of Splatoon 3's sales numbers. Something about them is weird, and I don't know what's up, and I've not seen anybody else mention this. So the game comes out, it's not out for very long, and then there's all these articles that are being like, Splatoon 3 sold 10 million units in 3 months. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. It's gonna easily go on to completely obliterate the sales of Splatoon 2. Absolutely, right? But it's been out for like a really long time now, and Nintendo, I think, has only updated the sales numbers one time in 2023, and at that time, they said it was only very slightly higher, still at 10 million and something units, and they haven't updated it since. And we get like quarterly earnings reports, and none of them have given us an update. They're like ignoring Splatoon 3, and I don't get it. I get that a game, it sells the most when it first comes out. You know, the opening, the launch, that's always the biggest. You can get these sleeper hits kinda, for the most part. Like, I get it. The early sales are always gonna be the biggest, but Nintendo games do tend to have legs, and if you can sell 10 million copies in 3 weeks, I feel like you're gonna coast past that, pretty comfortably coast past that 10 million mark. At least a bit, right? Especially over the course of an entire year? You mean to tell me it sold 10 million copies in 3 weeks and then just stopped? Stopped dead. Fell off a cliff. No one has bought Splatoon 3 in a year. I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand. Like, every time I look, I expect it to be higher. I expect it to be 12, 13, even 15. But it's still 10 million, just like it was 3 weeks after launch, and I don't get it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why no one is talking about this. I don't know what that is. Maybe some new info will come out sometime soon. Fiscal year ends in a couple months, so maybe we'll get something there. I don't know. I will say, though, like, obviously, 10 million is still a lot. Even if it did, theoretically, come out of the gate, sell 10 million instantly, and then drop off a cliff, they burned every copy anywhere that ever existed. It's just done. No one buys Splatoon 3 ever again. 10 million is still incredibly good. I don't, even among giant, extremely expensive AAA games, even in that kind of sphere, I feel like no matter what your game is and what your budget is, you're gonna look at 10 million and be like, yeah, that's pretty good right there. You know what I mean? That's pretty darn good. Pretty much no matter how you look at it, that's an overwhelming success. So that was me eating my crow. Yum yum, tasty crow. Anyone else wants to do that with me? Any other Splatoon 3 doubters want to come on down to the comments and eat some crow with me? You're more than welcome. There's more than enough for everybody. Thank you for watching. I love you. I still never did a Splatoon 3 review. Should I still do that? I feel like it's too late, but I kind of want to do it. I kind of want to do it anyway, just so I can say I did it. Maybe I will. I don't know. See you later.